Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mike Neal.
Thanks, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. Been working on Windows Server for quite some time, and it's exciting to have Windows Server 2016 ready for all of you. We've got a great little session for you. We're going to walk through Windows Server 2016 and talk about System Center 2016 as well. I've got a few slides to set some context, but we have 6 demos and demoers who are going to come up on stage, so we're very demo heavy, and video from some of our customers as well. I just wanted to start off by acknowledging that we've been a partner of all of you for quite some time. Windows Server is turning 20 years old, or just did. And it's exciting to see how it's evolved over these years. This slide actually makes me feel a little old, unfortunately. But with Windows NT 4, we really brought servers to the masses with an x86-based operating system and delivered really kind of a best-in-class server operating system that really transformed the industry. And as we progressed, we built Windows Server 2000 and really brought that into the enterprise environments. And then with Windows Server 2008, one of my favorite releases, we brought the Hyper-V technology and virtualization into the data center and really brought mainstream workloads and mission-critical workloads to Windows Server as well. With Windows Server 2012, we started the journey to the cloud, and we brought a lot of technologies that allowed all of you to start building private cloud and infrastructures within your environment. And of course, we started building Azure on top of Windows Server 2012 at that point in time as well. And now we have Windows Server 2016, and really helping you make that final transition, provide cloud capabilities in your on-prem environments, and also the server operating system that we use within Azure. And along with that, our System Center 2016 products as well. So in the celebration of Windows Server's 20-year anniversary, we're actually going to have a party on the show floor tonight around 5:30. So stop by the Windows Server booth. We got some great swag. There's going to be some cool food, and I think it'll be a fun time. So please drop by and check that out. So when we talk about Windows Server, it's really our foundation for the cloud. And all of you use it to build your infrastructure and run it within your environments, but we also use it to build Azure. And so a lot of what we did in Windows Server 2016 was informed by and really used to build the infrastructure and core technologies that we use to deliver Windows Azure. And of course, we're taking that investment that we've made in Windows Azure and bringing that back on-premise and delivering Azure Stack, so you have that same capability and you can use those same functionalities in your data centers as well. I just want to give you kind of an idea of the level of investment that we're making in Windows Azure. This photograph is of one of our data centers, and we have 34 regions around the world with over 100 data centers. And this is located here on the East Coast of the United States. These facilities are designed to hold hundreds of thousands of servers. They're multi-megawatt facilities, and they're mammoth in size. That little circle down in the lower corner is a large truck on the freeway in the foreground. And just to give you an idea of the scale of these solutions. And these systems are all built on top of Windows Server, and we run Windows Server within those data centers. And we're continuing to invest in this. This is another shot of the same site from a slightly different vantage point. The building that we were just looking at is now at the top of the picture, and this is the current expansion that's going on. We're seeing greater than 100% growth in Windows Azure, which is tremendous to see, and a lot of that's fueled by Windows Server. We also like to talk about the fact that we run a lot of Linux in that environment, and almost 30% of virtual machines are Linux. I like to talk about the fact that 70% of them are Windows Server. So we know all of you are under a lot of tension. IT is really kind of being pulled in 2 major directions. One of them is to be able to provide a secure cloud-controlled environment for your enterprise. And so being able to make sure that you've got the right controls in place, that you're meeting your conformance and requirements that you might have, and that you're delivering a secure environment is critical. But you also have a lot of pressure on you from the business, and the business is being transformed digitally. And that digital transformation is really pushing all of the businesses in the world to really need agility and be able to deliver new applications and new capabilities to the customer very, very quickly. And we see that transformation going on across the entire industry. So we want to make sure that we're listening to you and understanding what the stress points you have are, and that we're using our technology to go and solve those problems. And so what we hear very clearly is security is top of mind for customers. The number of threats out there are very severe, and they're growing in nature, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we're doing there to help you. Data center efficiency is critical for us as well. How do we get the most out of the money that we're spending within these environments and the investments that we're making? And then, of course, modernizing and delivering new applications, mobile applications, whatever that happens to be, to deliver for your business. So the areas that we focused on is to make sure that we've got great new advanced security capabilities, that we're delivering you an Azure-inspired software infrastructure to build your software-defined data center, and then also cloud-ready application platform to build the next generation applications, and provide you an underlying set of management tools that allow you to manage all of that within your environment. So let me just jump into the multi-layer security and talk a little bit about that as well. Quick drink of water. So as we think about what's going on in the industry, you've seen these headlines over and over again, and hopefully nobody in the audience is part of any of these headlines, but I think we can all relate as IT professionals that these types of security incidents are occurring more and more frequently and with greater and greater sophistication. And we want to make sure that we're arming you with the tools and technologies that help you combat these. As we think about what's going on in the industry, one of the things that we hear very clearly is that this is really a problem for the CEO within the company. And I think all of us in this room realize that if it's a CEO problem, it's going to very quickly roll downhill. And gravity will bring it into our wheelhouse to have to deal with. And so the impact of the business can be traumatic and can be very significant if there is such a breach within your environment. And so making sure that we're providing you the tools that you can protect your environment, but also be able to detect if there is a breach and then remediate that very efficiently if that occurs as well. So when we talk about the investments that we're making as part of Windows Server 2016, we really think of it as being able to protect the identity. That's critical. It's one of the easiest way for an attacker to get into your environment is by stealing an identity, and I'll talk a little bit about how that happens. Help you secure your environment, in particular virtual machines, since most people are using that as the primary way that they're delivering applications today. And then also make sure that you've got the on-premise OS protections that you need, or the same protections and capabilities if you're running in the public cloud or in a third-party hosted cloud solution as well. We want to make sure that you're safe and secure regardless of where you're running your workloads. So let's talk about some of the challenges that we see and just walk through this a little bit. The most used vector that we see for these types of attacks is basic social engineering. And really, it's the demonstrations, I think you saw it during some of the keynotes this morning, where somebody clicks on a link, and that takes them to a malicious website, and it compromises the credentials of that individual. And it could be anybody within the organization that happens to. But there are mechanisms in place today so that you can pass the hash, you can use that credential, and then parlay that broken credential and use it across the organization to ultimately gain administrative privileges somewhere within the environment. And one of the challenges in today's world is that domain admin has all the capabilities, can modify anything within the environment, and those capabilities are granted to that individual for the entire time. And so if a bad person gets that credential, has that capability, they can do a lot of damage within the organization, and they can do that over a long period of time. So some of the things that we did as part of Windows Server 2016 was we provided some great new technologies to protect your credentials. And I think this morning you heard a little bit about what we're doing in the client operating systems with our investments in the Defender technology to make sure that you're protected even if you click on that link. But let's say that for whatever reason your credential is compromised. We have new technologies within the product to protect your credentials, to guard them, and to make sure that they can't be remotely used to pass the hash and continue to attack the environment. And then the other big investment that we made was to really allow you to have much finer granular control over the type of administration that you can do and the period of time that administration can happen. And so instead of having the situation where you have all the control in the world for all the time, you can give control for short periods of time through our GIA technology and our JIT technology so that your administrators can get their work done, but don't leave the door open for the bad guy to come in and do something that they shouldn't. And so with that, I'm going to ask Ryan to come up on stage and give us a quick demonstration of this new technology.
Thank you, Mike. All right. So as Mike was just saying, one of the biggest threats we have today is how do we deal with identities which people are able to access through phishing attacks, pass the hash, any kind of way where someone who shouldn't have access is getting access through perhaps legitimate means. And one of the best ways we can avoid this is just by eliminating administrators entirely. But before you tell me how on earth am I going to get my job done, I'm going to show you how Just Enough Admin can help you get there without actually having to change much about your operational practices. So I'm going to assume the role of a network admin. My goal today is to go take a look at the DNS server. Like in most Windows Server environments, my DNS server is on an Active Directory domain controller. And those of you who know the security model there know that if I need to sign in with local admin privileges on a domain controller, I'm going to end up as a domain admin, meaning that I'll be in charge of everything identity and resource related in my organization, even though I'm just trying to do something related to DNS. So I'm going to show you quickly using PowerShell remoting that I currently can't connect to my domain controller because the user I'm signed in as does not have access. I'm not a domain admin. But if I go do the same thing again, but provide the name of a GIA configuration, I'm able to get in. And a configuration named here called GIA is just something a highly trusted admin set up for the purpose of me managing the server without needing to be an admin. So behind the scenes, what GIA is doing is it's actually spinning up a temporary virtual account, which is used to execute all the commands I'm running. This account only exists on this machine, and it only exists for the duration of my session. So the moment I end up leaving this PowerShell management session, I am no longer going to be that account will no longer exist, and should malware be on that machine, it can't leverage that credential to do anything because that account only exists on that single machine, and it goes away almost immediately. So just to quickly show you here, the stuff I can do is same as I would if I were using a normal PowerShell command. So I can run get DNS server zone. I'm using the same exact syntax I normally would. Same kind of parameter binding, and I get the same kind of PowerShell output. What I can't do, though, is I can't do things like browse the file system. I'm currently in a DNS viewer role. There's no reason for me to view the file system. If I had access to that, I could go modify or copy files, including the Active Directory database, which could be extremely dangerous. I also can't run commands that aren't relevant to me, so I can't do add AD group member or anything along those lines. So if we look over here on the right, what I do have access to is all of the get commands from the DNS server. I'm just doing day-to-day maintenance. That's something that's safe for me to do. I can't cause any harm with get commands. But say I find something's wrong with my server. I have a poisoned DNS cache or something, and I need to actually make a change. How am I going to do that? And that's where just-in-time administration comes in. So I need to elevate into some kind of role which gives me more privileges to get this job done. So I'm going to head over here to the Microsoft Identity Manager portal, where you'll see I have a couple roles here that I can activate. And each of these roles is just a simple membership in a security group. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to become a full DNS admin. It just means that there's a new security group relevant to my GIA session, which will perhaps give me some more privileges. So like any good elevation system, I'm asked to justify why I'm doing this. So I'm just going to say I'm clearing a poisoned DNS server cache. And a really important thing here is this timeout. As an admin, you can specify how long someone's allowed to have these privileges. So for the next 30 minutes, I will be able to be an administrator of this DNS server. 31 minutes from now, I'm back to that viewer role. I'm only able to do what I was already allowed to do on my day-to-day basis. Now, of course, I could come back and extend my activation if whatever I'm doing is taking too long, but that's just a great option for helping me elevate into a better role. And just quickly, I'm not going to use it in this demo, but you can also do multi-factor authentication through Azure and manual workflows, like having your manager or a peer approve your request to make sure that the thing you're doing is super sensitive. I want to make sure that you're the right person who's accessing this privilege. So now what I'm going to do here is going to clear the screen, my PS session, and I'm going to go actually and re-enter my GS session. So enter PS session, dccontoso.com. So it's the same exact command I typed earlier, but since I elevated into that new role on the Microsoft Identity Manager portal, I now have access to all the DNS server commands. So I can go over here and I'm like, oh, you know what, my DNS server cache was poisoned, so I'm just going to go clear that. And it works as you'd expect. As you see, I'm getting a confirm prompt just like you normally would in PowerShell. It's the same experience. We want to make it as consistent as possible. And I can also do things like restart service, DNS. And I showed earlier that we're able to whitelist and blacklist commands. We actually can go much further with PowerShell. So we're actually able to say, you know what, it's relevant to me to restart the DNS service, but I can't restart Active Directory. So we let you go all the way down and say, these are the parameters you can use, these are the values you're allowed to supply, and help you get a really tight control of what you're trying to manage in your environment. So that's all I have in this quick GIA demo. I really hope that this was helpful to you, and I hope to see you at the Windows Server security sessions throughout the week.
Thank you, Ryan. Good job. So that's exciting to see how we can provide those new controls within the environment and relatively easy to implement within your current environments and take advantage of that new functionality. One of the other things that we had seen from attackers was attacks against virtual machines. And one of the things that's very great about a virtual machine is you can pack up the application and its data and the operating system, and you have it all in one file, and you can live migrate it around your data center. All that's really great until somebody comes in and takes that virtual machine and copies it off and takes that data off somewhere to do something malicious with it. And what we've seen is that a lot of attackers have really been interested in gaining access to that host operating system because they can then go and get access to all of the virtual machines that are running in that environment. And so we've invested heavily, and Jeff Woolsey gave a great demonstration of this during Jason's talk in our shielded VMs technology. And so the shielded VMs technology allows us to protect the virtual machine, to encrypt all of its information, and make that secure from the guest perspective so that if that virtual machine is copied off and taken somewhere, it's an encrypted file. The hacker has basically no good things that he can do with it because they don't have the keys available to them to be able to decrypt it. And the virtual TPM that we surface within the virtual machine allows that virtual machine, if it's running in the right environment, in the right location, to decrypt itself and be able to run in those environments. Additionally, we protect all of the host access points, and so you can't go in through the console and gain console access to the virtual machine, et cetera. And so we've really locked down that environment and allows you to be able to take sensitive data in a virtual machine and provide it to an administrator that you may or may not have full trust in. And so that might be internally with a large organization, or you might want to be able to provide those virtual machines to a hoster who's going to then run that on your behalf. And if they're using shielded virtual machines, you can be sure that that hoster's administrators of the physical hosts don't have access to your data in your virtual machine. We got a great session on shielded virtual machines, so I encourage everybody to go and check that out. So you'll see a number of sessions. We've got new capabilities across a lot of different areas. I encourage everybody to check out the program guide that we put together and go and take the deep dive into the next step of these security sessions as you have the time. So with that, I'm going to bring Erin Chappell on stage, and she's going to talk a little bit about the investments that we made in our software-defined data center. Erin has been a program manager on Windows Server since 1998. Sorry. And it was also her birthday, so we're going to say happy birthday to Erin. How's that? Everybody, 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So I have the pleasure to be here today to talk to you about our Azure-inspired software-defined data center. We've been on this journey of software-defined for several releases. And what I think is really kind of transformational in what we're doing in this release is just the close partnership that we've had with Azure and really understanding, today you saw this morning, you saw in the keynote, just the scale that we have globally around the world and what we're operating at. And we're really learning from that on a day-to-day basis, and we're taking that technology and we're really bringing it in and delivering it through Windows Server 2016 so that you can reap the benefits of all that learning in your environment. Now, it's not exactly the Azure code that's running on premises. We need to really take it and tune it and tailor it for the environment that you have. Last I checked, most customers did not go and roll in, right, a stamp into their data center all at once and deploy thousands of storage nodes on a daily basis. But we've really taken that learning and brought it down and applied it to what we see customers like yourself implementing in their environment. When we started this whole journey around Windows Server 16, we really engaged deeply with a cohort or a set of customers like yourself. And that was very beneficial to us because it enabled us to really learn, right, what was going on, right? What were the concerns or trends that you saw in your environment? And what are you faced with on a day-to-day basis? And what we heard loud and clear is that you really are at this kind of inflection point, both in terms of looking at the cloud and looking and wanting to invest in technology and infrastructure that will carry you forward. Mike talked about the first 20 years. We're kind of setting up the next 20 years and what we want to do together with you. But also, there's just hard realities that you face within the world today, right? You've got demands from CEOs, from CTOs saying, wow, I don't want you to appear on the front page news. I don't want to make that kind of news. I want to make different kind of news. And so how do I keep the environment secure? How do I adhere to all the compliance and the regulations that are coming up? How do I make sure that I just have the best infrastructure? It's rock solid. And oftentimes that comes with being conservative and kind of being, slow in some sense to adopt because you really want to be rigorous and test and whatnot. And yet you've got the demands of this digital transformation and what's happening with developers and wanting to drive agility and application development. In some sense that creeps into this concept of generating shadow IT, right? Because developers are going to use the thing that they want, that gets them there the fastest and the greatest. And if you can't provide that for them, then you're really in a challenging place. And so the demands that are being, that you are under are overwhelming at times. And that's where we really see Windows Server 2016 as being able to help you through that transition and be able to give you the best of both that infrastructure that you know and trust, but also set you up in order to drive the application innovation. Because as much as I love servers, I don't think we deploy servers to deploy servers. We really deploy them to drive the business and drive the business agility that we have. And so we've made investments, as I said, coming from Azure and landing on-prem along three areas: compute, network, and storage, kind of the holy trinity of the software-defined data center. The first thing that we heard when we talked to customers is, it's just really hard to roll out a new version of the operating system, right? It just takes me too much time. And so we looked at how we could improve and look at what we can do in the clustering layer of things to really help speed up the deployment. And two of the features here that I'm really excited about are the rolling cluster upgrades, as well as mixed mode OS cluster upgrades. So what this enables you to do is to essentially drain a node in your existing cluster, right? Bring in a 16 server, add it into the cluster, and move forward. And you can kind of now get into this place where you can move your cluster and your infrastructure forward with no downtime from a tenant point of view, which we think is pretty transformational. We've also done a lot of work around VM resiliency, right? We learned from Azure, right? Stuff's gonna happen. You don't, hope and cross your fingers and say stuff isn't going to happen. You plan for it to happen. And so we've done a lot of work from a VM resiliency point of view, looking at our error conditions, our timeouts, et cetera, and tuning that to make sure that we have a better uptime across the cluster. And we've also done some work in fault domain cluster fault domain aware clusters, which really sees that you can map out what the fault domains are, so that as you're kind of thinking about where the copies of your data are being stored or where the copies of your application are being stored, that if you can make sure that they're being distributed not only across a different set of devices, but also a different top of rack switch, et cetera, so that you can be more resilient from that point of view. All of these clustering enhancements happen on top of kind of the base performance improvements that we've made within the Hyper-V Foundation. I was doing a partner pre-briefing on Sunday with Jeffrey, and we were really excited because we were talking about the scale of what Hyper-V supports in this release. And I can tell you, the first thing you might say is, well, did you drive this based on customer feedback? And we didn't. We drove it based on Azure and what we're doing in Azure to do the scales, because we haven't yet met a customer in some sense that's going at that level of scale. But in this release, we've gone from supporting, we now support 24 terabytes of physical memory on the host machine running Hyper-V. Can I just say that again? 24 terabytes of memory on the physical host and 12 terabytes in a virtual machine. We support 512 physical processors on the machine, and we support 240 virtual processors within the virtual machine. Right? These are scale numbers that are nowhere seen in the industry. And they're driven a lot by what we're seeing in Azure and the kind of high workloads around just high graphic intensive workloads. And so we're pretty excited. And again, can I say that again? 24 terabytes of memory. Can I get an applause? That's pretty awesome. Second part is really around this complete software-defined storage solution. Here we're building on top of the storage spaces work that we did in Windows Server 2012 to enable you to take direct attached storage, right, so commodity storage, and enable it and deliver it in a high resilient way so that you can kind of get rid of the dependency on SANs and kind of other high-end storage devices and bring it local into your servers. That's really important in what we see as being the hyper-converged scenario, right? So oftentimes we've supported historically a converged scenario where you deliver compute, right? And you have a cluster of compute nodes. It talks to SMB, to the scale-out file system on the back. But what we're seeing is people wanting to bring in converged systems or hyper-converged systems where storage and compute are on the same node. And you can kind of scale incrementally both compute and storage together. These kind of prepackaged solutions in some sense enable you to really bring in and roll in the building blocks into your data center and your environment in order to be able to scale out as you need. Additionally, in the software-defined storage space, we've done a lot of work in kind of disaster recovery type scenarios. So storage replica is probably one of the sleeper features in Windows Server 2016. This allows you to do both asynchronous as well as synchronous replication of your storage devices, which are really beneficial if you look at disaster recovery scenarios where you want to have that synchronous replication across different sites, different regions, et cetera. And then lastly, we've done a lot of work in the quality of service of the storage layer and just being able for you to kind of control what the performance is of the storage related to the tenants running on top of the machine. So with this, I'd like to bring up Klaus Jorgensen to give us a demo of some of the awesome improvements in Storage Spaces Direct.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope you're as excited about storage as I am. If not, you get to see it anyway. All right, so as Aaron talked about, Storage Spaces Direct enables hyper-converged computing in Windows Server 2016 by using servers with internal drives. So in order to understand the performance in these types of systems, we teamed up with our good friends at Intel using their latest generation Intel CPUs as well as an Intel all-flash SSD system to gain some performance information. So the system we have is 16 servers configured like that, and on top of that, we run 704 VMs running an open source storage performance benchmark tool called VM Fleet, which is available to all of you. So first we configure all our VMs to run with a storage performance profile that is similar to Azure Premium Storage P10, which effectively is 500 IOPS for a disk. So for each VM runs 500 IOPS. In a system like this, that is 350,000 IOPS total. Now, that is actually a relatively trivial for a system like this. So let's up the ante a bit. Let's change all of the VMs to run with a storage performance profile similar to Azure Premium Storage P20. P20 is 2,300 IOPS per disk. And that brings us to 1.6 million IOPS total in this system. And notice that we're not talking just read IOPS. This is actually 70% read and 30% writes IOPS that's going on in this system. Incidentally, we're running about 100,000 IOPS per server node. This is similar to the highest claim we've been able to find out there of any current in-market hyperconverged products. So can we do better? Well, of course we can. This is us. You know me. I talk about storage performance all the time, as much as I can. So let's go and just unleash the VMs. Let's go weapons free and go as fast as we can with this particular system. So with unlimited IOPS per VM, we run a total of 2.7 million IOPS. The cool thing is here is that is actually somewhere 60+% better than what I was just talking about. And if you notice on the hypervisor piece, that is actually how much CPU just the infrastructure is consumed, which is less than 10%. The rest of it is all the guest workload, the stuff that is really running your business. So the overhead here is absolutely minimal. So read and write workloads are very interesting. But what if we did all read? Can we do interesting scenarios there as well? So now we're effectively going to swing all the 704 VMs using VM Fleet from doing read-write I/O to just do read I/O, right? That takes a minute because we're going to actually reconfigure all of the 700 VMs. And then as the VMs pick up the change, you'll see that the I/O starts increasing. 2.8, 2.9. How far high do we think we can go? 3.6? 5? 6? 6.6 is actually as high as this particular system goes with an all-read workload. The other point is you still see the CPU that is the hypervisor, which includes all the storage I/O as well as the networking traffic across all these machines, still sits at 10% of the CPU consumption, which is very efficient. This is actually due to the fact that Storage Spaces Direct is embedded in the kernel, and we leverage RDMA-enabled networking, which is also doing kernel time. So we are super efficient here. The other point I want to make is that you can go to my session on Wednesday at 4 p.m., where we go in great detail with Storage Spaces Direct, and I will show you throughput numbers. This was IOPS numbers. I'll show you throughput numbers that will knock your socks off. Thank you.
Thanks, Klaus. So one of the things that we've learned over the last several releases is that as we move more and more into the software-defined space, that it doesn't decrease the dependency on hardware, it actually increases it in a different way. And making sure that these systems, as they come together, have the right disk drives, they have the right network cards, they have the right network switches, they have the right firmware, et cetera, is super critical in order to be able to put these systems together and roll out and add that capacity into your environment. So in this release, one of the things we've done is we've partnered closely with a number of partners. All of the partners listed on this slide have software-defined offerings in action on the Partner Expo floor, so I would encourage you to go down and see this in action. But we work with them to really look at what is the design that they need to be putting together, what's the architecture that they need to be putting together to produce these hyperconverged or disaggregated type solutions. And then what's the validation that we're going to run on top of it in order to make sure that we can guarantee that when those solutions come into your environment, they are the quickest, cheapest, most cost-effective, most performant way for you to add capacity into your data center. And so I would highly encourage you to both go attend the expo floor and see what we've done in this space and the partners that we've been working with. But look at this as you think about adopting 2016 and rolling out this infrastructure in your environment, because I think you'll see a lot of the benefits of the validation and the testing that we've done come to bear through these offerings. I would be remiss for not then pointing out that kind of the new deployment option that we have in Windows Server 2016 has been highly tailored to the software-defined scenarios, and in particular to running the host OS or the operating system that is on the host OS in your environment. So Nano Server is our Just Enough OS offering. It really is taking a look at all of the components in the system and saying, what's the bare minimum that I need to run, either to be the host operating system, or kind of later on we'll talk about it is also very relevant in the container space where you want a really light runtime in order to get density and boot speed and kind of deployment speed. But we still have the old deployment options in Windows Server 2016, both server with a desktop as well as server core, but we've introduced this Nano Server deployment option. Just if you look at the numbers, it is like 460 megabytes. 460 megabytes, right? As compared to about 5.5 gigs for server core. It is super lightweight. This means that it boots in less than 10 seconds. The setup time is 35 seconds, right? It has a reduced surface attack area because you don't have all the components running that you don't need. And so I'd really highly encourage you to look at this as you think about rolling out both new hosts from an infrastructure perspective and again as containers when you think about building new cloud-born native applications. I will say that in this release, we are not launching Nano Server in what's called the current branch for business. And so it is on a support mechanism where you will need to continue to kind of roll forward and take updates from us as we release them. It's our intent that we would release those 2 to 3 times a year, right? And that really is, you can think of Nano as the basis for our cloud infrastructure moving forward. And we really think that to keep pace with the innovation that's happening, we want to move at that space. I will also say that, we started intentionally by making it super small, right? Which means that it's probably missing something you need. I'll be completely transparent. And that's why we want feedback, right? Because we will build it up over time, but we want to build it up in a very purposeful way. We want to build it up in a way where you can decide what components you want running or not running, as opposed to us giving you kind of one monolithic component that you need to install. So we'd love the feedback. I know Andrew Mason has several sessions later in this week and will be in the booth. I'd also highly encourage you, maybe one of the most fun things that we have at the booth this time is we have a HoloLens NanoMan experience, so that you can both try out a HoloLens but also kind of experience more of what we're doing in the future of where we're going with Nano. So please check that out. Last piece of the trio is around software-defined networking. And as I kind of talked about in the beginning, one of the things that we're realizing IT being faced with is, transforming what needs to happen in this digital transformation, which oftentimes is grounded in the application. And so one of the things I think that software-defined networking really enables you to do is to have workload portability, right? Application portability by enabling your applications to move between and across networks. We've taken a lot of the work that's been done in Azure around the network controller, kind of learned from that, brought that on premise. We've added VXLAN support in addition to NVGRE support, so we're not really kind of concerned about the underlying transport. We're concerned about just providing this capability to you. And we've provided the ability to virtualize network functions. I think this is better kind of articulated in a demo. So with that, I'm going to bring up Greg on stage to give us a look at how we secure a software-defined network.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, by now, a lot of you have become familiar with the agility you get when you deploy into Azure. You get to create the network and all the services that an application requires at the time you go and you deploy your application. But when you deploy on premises, you don't get that same agility. You're stuck in the world of hardware appliances, lots of administrators, and that really slows you down. Well, with Windows Server 2016 Data Center and the Azure-inspired software-defined networking, we're going to give you that same Azure-like agility for your own data centers. So let me show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deploy this application. It's a multi-tier application. It's got a web server at the front end, actually a couple instances of web server. It's got file servers in the middle, and it's got Active Directory at the back. That Active Directory server is going to need to talk to the outside world, perhaps to Azure Active Directory to get some information from there. And at the same time, we need the users to be able to connect to a single IP endpoint to be able to load balance across those web servers. So let's go back to my demo environment. And what I've done is I've already created the VMs. These VMs have been created, but they don't have any network connectivity. I haven't created any of the network that's needed that will need to meet those requirements yet. We're going to do that now as part of the demo. But first, let me just show you. There's no pinging going through. If I open up my browser, I can't connect to Bing. I basically got no connectivity whatsoever. So I'm going to open up this PowerShell script, and I'm going to run this script. It's going to run against the new network controller role that's in Windows Server. And what it's going to do while it's running is it's going to create everything that this app needs. It's going to meet those requirements I just talked about. It's going to create the virtual network. It's going to create 3 different subnets. It's going to configure the routing to route between those subnets. It's going to create an internal virtual IP for load balancing the file servers. It's going to create a virtual IP for the public so that all of the users, this .6 address, they're going to be able to connect to that, and it's going to load balance between those 2 web servers. And then finally, it's going to create an outbound NAT configuration so that the servers that need to get outside can get outside, because this is a private address space. So let's go back and see how far that script's gone. You can see in less than 30 seconds, it actually did all of that configuration. You can see the VM over here on the left side has its ping is working, so I think we have connectivity. And let's just make sure that the NAT is actually working. There's today's Bing homepage. So we've actually given this, this VM connectivity. Let's actually see if the service that we've deployed is actually now able to be connected to. So I'm just going to open up a browser from the outside. We'll connect to the .6 address that is the endpoint for the load balancer. And hey, there I am. There's Greg's networking blog. This is what we just deployed as that application. And just to prove that we are actually load balancing, I've configured a unique web page on each of the 2 web servers. If I go to that special URL to reference that web page, I can see here on web server VM1, it comes up green. If I just refresh so that it loads it again, here now I'm going to VM2. I can keep refreshing. It's toggling back and forth. So I've deployed the application. It's everything it needs. It's going to the file server. It's got its load balancer in place. All right, I'm done. I can go. I can catch up on some email that I've been waiting to work on. All right, these demos make me hungry. I want some free tacos. I'm just going to click on this. This looks legitimate. I just have to enter my Contoso credentials. No problem. All right, cool. So I think I'm getting free tacos in the next few minutes, but I'm really going to actually be wishing that I've implemented some of the JIT and GS stuff you saw earlier, because what I did was I just gave my credentials to a hacker, or what's known as a black hat. I just happen to have a black hat here. If I can get it off. So we're going to enter that world of that hacker for the next minute or so, and let's see what they can do with those credentials. It's my hat. I've got my hacker wallpaper. I'm ready to go. All right, so let's connect to that. Now, as a hacker, I probably would have already probed that endpoint and used that as the inspiration for the phishing attack you just saw. And so I'm going to connect to that over RDP, because I've probably seen that there's an RDP portal or a connection probe open. And I'm going to log in. You can see right there, it's logging me right into that VM. This is the same VM you saw a minute ago. I'm now into the web server. Now, this is pretty exciting. I can go and deface this web page, but I really want to get to something a little bit meatier. So I'm going to go, and I'm going to probably upload a script. Let's call it hack attack. And I'm going to start looking around. I'm going to look for a domain controller. I'm going to look to see if there are any shares open on that domain controller. You can see here, the admin of this didn't make it too difficult. They left the C share open. They can see here's the NTDS credential store. And I can now open up Explorer, copy that to my clipboard. I can paste it. I can even open up, using that outbound NAT access, I can open up OneDrive. I can upload it to OneDrive, and now brute force attack against that file, and take my time with it. All right, let's return to the real world now. So, you saw earlier how to protect against, with credential guards, GIA, but there's more that we can do, right? As Mike said earlier, security is multifaceted. We're going to actually go and use the dynamic security capabilities with software-defined networking to really lock down the network so that this attacker can't even get to the AD machine or the machines that they're not allowed to get to. So let me minimize some of these. Let's go back to PowerShell. And I'm going to run another script now, again, against the same network controller that I have deployed here. And I'm going to run this security configuration. And so what's going to happen while that script is running is we still got that attacker out there. He's trying to get in. He's not going to go away. But what we're going to do is we're going to layer firewall rules, we call them network security groups, on top of the subnets. Now, it's important that I'm putting it on the subnet, because now any VM that I put in those subnets, even if I'm scaling out, even the VMs themselves are going to get these rules applied to themselves automatically by the network controller. I can even put rules in so that I can block access from web server 1 to web server 2, so they can't even attack each other. With a hardware appliance, you'd have to actually route through that appliance in order to get that L2 level of protection. I'm also inserting a Linux virtual appliance to then do deeper inspection, because a lot of you do have appliances that you're very familiar with that you have to use for whatever reason. We'll let you put that in as a virtual appliance, and you can take advantage of all those capabilities too. All right, so you can see the script ran. In this case, it only took 5 seconds. We put a bunch of rules on. Now let's go back to the world of the hacker. Let's reopen the RDP. And this can sit here, and it'll take a while, and it actually won't actually get in. I can assure you that even if it did get in, I've blocked down the access so that I can't get to Active Directory anymore. I also made it so that I can't even get out from my web servers to the internet. So I only let in the one port 80 that I need. There it is, didn't connect. And I only let access to the file server out at the back end and DNS, a few of the ports that I know I have to get to. I mentioned the Linux virtual appliance earlier. Here it is. I'm going to just unpause this view here. And this is going to show you all of the network flows that are actually currently going through this appliance. You can see we're actually doing everything that's going to that .3 subnet is being routed through this Linux appliance. This Linux appliance has no knowledge that it's part of a software-defined virtual network. There are lots of partners on the show floor out there that have appliances that run on Hyper-V. Go talk to them, find out what they have that you can use in your virtual networks. All right, the last thing I want to close with is that I did all of this through PowerShell directly against the network controller. But we also have integration with System Center, because a lot of you are System Center. That's your management tool of choice. We have integration. We have the network controller here added to System Center Virtual Machine Manager. I've got gateways added. I've got the load balancer, the Azure-inspired load balancer that's included in Windows Server as well. And you can see that I have a virtual network created, and I've got some VMs connected to that network as well. So you've got the management tool you're familiar with as well. You can use that with the new software-defined networking. So I did all of this. I set up all the needs of the application. I created a load balancing configuration. I locked it down. I did it all in well under a minute. And it's all available to you with software that's in Windows Server Data Center. Thanks.
So just to close out this section, we really feel the investment that we put in this release, it is game-changing. If you add this with the security and the assurance improvements, shielded VNs, we really think we have a product that competes and differentiates in the marketplace like no other product that exists out there. And so one thing I do want to leave you with is that we do have a VMware migration offer that's in place today. You can migrate your vSphere hosts, and for every vSphere host that you retire, you will get a free Windows Server 2016 data center. So we encourage you to evaluate both the new functionality in the software-defined data center as well as the system center management capabilities that come with it, and look at that in the context of your environment. I'm going to pause for a second because there are a lot of cameras out there. This is like the best slide ever. All right, I see 1 left, 2 left, 3 left. We are running behind time, so you have 30 seconds to stamp your photo. And then my next slide I'm just going to show you is there are a ton of sessions on software defined. We're actually going to give you a link at the end of this presentation that gives you a handy little website that you can view on your mobile site where you can filter all of the different sessions to see what's available across the show on Windows Server 16 and System Center 16. So please take a look, and with that I'm going to hand back to Mike to take us into application innovation.
Thank you. Well, that was exciting to see all of the new capabilities that we have in the software-defined data center and the infrastructure capabilities. Obviously, one of the things that we are doing with that is running all the applications that you all are building on top of that. And Windows Server has been our platform of choice for developing applications. We're obviously investing and continuing to build more capabilities into the platform as well. One of the challenges I think everybody has is we're now dealing with a fairly diverse set of infrastructure. We've got physical systems, we've got virtual machines, we've got things on-premise, we've got things in the public cloud, we've got legacy monolithic applications, and we're all starting to build new applications that are based around the microservices architecture. And so we made investments as part of Windows Server 2016 to add new capabilities to help you build those new applications and manage those new applications and do that with the tools that you know and love today. And so a big investment for us is really building the container technology as part of Windows Server 2016. And I'm just going to walk through and talk a little bit about what a container is. In the past, we had physical hardware, an operating system, and an application on top of it. It was a lot simpler. We came along and added virtualization technology, be able to build virtual machines. We virtualized the underlying hardware, ran the operating system and the application inside of each one of those virtual machines. But with containers, we actually take the operating system layer and we virtualize that. And so that operating system is then shared amongst all of the containers that are running on that machine. And so we have a single shared kernel that's running multiple containers on top of that and providing the capabilities in much, much more dense environment and performant environments. And so with Windows Server 2016, we actually added Windows Server container technology, and that allows you to have the maximum performance and agility and be able to deploy applications very quickly. Works great in a DevOps environment, works great in these microservices environments, and it's sort of chocolate and peanut butter along with Nano Server. You can bring containers together and Nano Server, and it tastes great together. We also wanted to make sure that you had technology to allow you to isolate and manage and maintain these and be able to do that in much the same way you do virtual machines today. And so we've added the capability to have Hyper-V containers. And using the same commands and the same container images, you can make the choice, an operational choice, as to whether you deploy those as a shared environment with a single kernel image, or you can deploy them into Hyper-V containers where the hypervisor is providing a hardware layer of security around those virtual machines. And one of the nice things about Hyper-V containers is that each one of those can be individually serviced. If you service the operating system on a Windows Server container, all of the containers change at the same time. With Hyper-V, you can manage the life cycle of each one of those containers independently. This is great technology for being able to take applications that you have today and bringing those together and containerize them. You heard Tycho talk a little bit about how they're using containers with their applications, even today using Windows Server 2016. But it also allows you to work with your development community and build those new modern applications that will take us forward and transform the business. So with that, I'm going to bring Taylor up on stage, and he's going to give us a quick demonstration of the container technology.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Get over to the right machine here. Let's see, not getting anything on the KVM. We got our tech. Do we need something on the switch? Oh, there we go, okay. All right. So we heard from Tycho this morning about how containers have worked with them. So I'm going to show you just real quick how easy it is to take that first step and move an application over to containers. So we've got a Windows Server 2012 box here, and we can look at this guy, and it's using about 3.8 gigs of RAM, and it's running a basic little website. And if we go open a browser here, we can go look at that website. It's just the sample ASP.NET website from Visual Studio. This has served as the foundation for many, many websites that many of us have. And so we're going to go ahead and move this over to a container. And we'll start by just simply going to the deploy and export to export this application. Go through the wizard here, pick a place to export it. I like to use the desktop. So there we go. And as quick as that, we've now exported our application. So here it is. You can look inside. It's got some content. We'll just go ahead and copy that and go on over to our Server 2016 machine. So we can look at this guy. He's been booted up. He's using about 1.5 gigs of RAM right now. So that's quite a bit of savings already. But we're not doing much here yet. So let's go ahead and get a container up and running with our website. To do that, we're going to use what's called a Docker file. And a Docker file is basically some instructions for building a container. So we're going to start from this web deploy image, which is just an IIS image that has a web deploy toolkit. We're going to expose port 80 for our website. 8172 is our management portal, so we can use that for managing. And then we're going to copy in that mysite.zip file. Now the real magic. We're going to use the PS snapin for web deploy, and we're going to restore the web deploy package. All right, so let's kick this guy off. Open our command prompt here, and we're just going to say docker build -t, we'll call it mysite, and the location for the Docker file right there. So this is now building a container, and it's doing that by running a container and capturing the changes. So we're now at the point where we're running our PowerShell command. And in a second here, we're going to see the output of running that command. There we go. It's completed, no errors. And now we're making a container image. We're capturing all those changes, and we're putting them off onto the side so that we can start a container from that. So there we go. We've got a container. So now we're going to start it up. We're going to say docker run -d for run it as a background. -p map support, so we want to say 80 to 80, and the container image itself, my site. Just that fast, we've got a container up and running. To prove it, we'll go WS 2016, and we'll go to my site. Now, this first time, it's going to take a second because we're actually compiling the .NET code, right? The first time we run ASP.NET pages, we do a compilation. So it's doing that compile inside that container right now, and there we go. We've got a container up and running. We've moved our site over. But wait, there's more. Let's start up a couple more of these. Watch how fast this is. So we'll start up another one. And while we're doing that, let's take a look at our memory usage. So we're at 1.9. We'll start up a third one. So we're now running 3 instances of that container on this machine using 2 gigs of memory. Remember, we were at 4 gigs before on Server 2012. But as Mike said, we also have Hyper-V containers. So by just saying isolation equals Hyper-V and giving it a new fresh port, we can take that same container image and start it up inside of the isolated Hyper-V environment. Now, this first one takes a little bit longer to start up because we're using some clone technology in the background to optimize the way we start up Hyper-V containers. So we've started up our first one. Just for fun, I'll start up a second one while we prove that we're up and running. So we'll go over WS 2016. That one was on 83. So while that's spinning up, we can see we're at 2.6 gigs of memory. We've got 3 Windows Server containers running and 2 Hyper-V containers running on the same machine using less memory than we did with Server 2012. That's how easy it is to get started with containers and take the first step towards having an agile microservice environment. Thank you very much.
That was awesome. It's really exciting to see that technology come to market. And we've had a great partnership with Docker in developing this technology. In fact, we've been a significant open source contributor to the Docker project, and we're actually now, one of our engineers is a maintainer of the open source Docker project. We also announced today a commercial agreement with Docker to make their enterprise-grade tools available to all Windows Server 2016 customers at no additional charge. And so you get to use the Docker enterprise technology, and applause is great, appreciate that. You get to use the Docker technology, and Microsoft and Docker will support all of your customers in using that new technology. So we're going to get a lot of information about the application platform. There's a number of sessions that are available. Like I said, we'll have a great little cheat sheet guide for you at the end so that you can look through and check out all the great things that we're doing. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we're doing to provide the unified management capabilities that allow you to manage all of these environments. And so, of course, System Center is one of the core products that I think everybody here uses to help manage their environments. And we continue to invest in Windows as part of Windows Server 2016 and System Center 2016 to enhance those products and those capabilities. And so a lot of the great new functionality that you've seen here is manageable through System Center and the products that are available as part of it. We showed a little vignette of VMM being able to manage some of the new software-defined data center capabilities, and we've enhanced Operations Manager and the other products as part of Windows Server 2016. The other thing we did was we listened to all of you, and we heard very loud and clear that we needed to enhance the performance and usability of those tools. And so we invested in making the performance enhancements, and we invested in a bunch of functionality that really helps to make those tools much more usable within your environments. And so you'll see us continue to invest in System Center going forward, and we've got a couple of demonstrations coming up of that technology as well. We also want to make sure that we've got a good basis of being able to manage your on-premise infrastructure and be able to then also manage hybrid environments using Azure as well. And so we've really invested in the monitoring capabilities and making sure that we've got new network monitoring functionality as part of the solution, and then also best-in-class configuration management and being able to manage and patch and maintain your environment as part of those tools as well. So with that, I will bring Mahesh up, and he's going to give us a quick demonstration of some of the new capabilities in System Center 2016.
Right. Thanks, Mike. Give me a second. Let me just put it to my setup. Alrighty. Exciting technologies, and management obviously is going to be complex. Well, that's not the case. A lot of getting simplified from the management point of view. It's quite, all of us can relate this aspect that IT pros find it a challenge to, monitor all these different systems, especially when they're in large alert numbers and stuff. And IT pros typically want to have a quick and a right and actionable alert so that they can really go and have the resolution of these alerts, happen in a timely manner, right? And at this point in time, the IT pros are following a lot of different diverse approaches with regard to generating certain reports, doing analysis on it, and then tuning their monitoring system, based on that. So what we have done in System Center Operation Manager 2016 is sorry. All right. All right, so what we have done in System Center 2016 Operation Manager is a new capability to handle these large alert numbers and stuff, and that's a better way of dealing these large number of alerts because there are diverse aspects of it which introduce these alerts, especially in scenarios where you have a lot of transient and false notification that happens from various different systems. The IT administrator, the IT pro need to be really factoring in some of those aspects. So here is a new capability which is introduced known as Tune Management Packs. The whole idea is to give you a statistical context of each of these management packs, the amount of alerts that generated by these management packs, and you can double-click into various different aspects of these alerts and the monitoring contributing to these large number of alerts. So user can actually, interestingly, traverse back in time, right? And in this example, I'm just trying to look at a scenario wherein in the month of August, if a user want to look at a bunch of alerts, and and especially for management pack that is generating alerts more than 50 alerts for that last month and stuff, right? He get a clear sense of what are those different management pack which is contributing to those alert. On clicking on the tune alert, selecting the management pack and clicking on the tune alerts, gets a clear statistical dimension of what are the set of alerts which is actually generating it, what the severity of those, what are the unit monitors responsible for those alerts and stuff. So user can select one of those and do the necessary override. And when you do the override, again, the override can be either done at a single object level or a group of computers, the override is pretty straightforward configuration wherein it is about tuning some of the threshold parameters for each of those particular monitor. In this case, it's an available memory-related error, so user can go and have an override value which is appropriate for his IT environment. So this is one aspect of the capability, but the problem of a large number of alert doesn't end just with this scenario. One of the most common scenario where the large number of alerts are dealt is during the maintenance cycle, right? When you have IT pro initiate some of those maintenance cycle for his IT environment, ideally speaking, IT pro expect the monitoring system to suppress those particular alerts so that he doesn't get to look at these alerts and reduce the efficiency in which he's trying to tackle the resolution of the problems. So this is yet another capability that is added in 2016 version of Operations Manager. If you go to the monitoring tab of Operations Manager and look at the maintenance schedules, you get to see all the schedule maintenance mode that has been configured, right? And user can create new maintenance schedule. I'm just trying to walk through one of those experiences. He gets to select some of the objects to which he want to have the maintenance schedule configured. He can again go and have it done for a specific computer or a group. He selects a computer or a group. In this case, I'm just selecting a computer. And there you go. And then user is able to configure either a kind of a one-time scheduled maintenance for that particular asset. This is for the scenarios like, for example, the unplanned or the emergency kind of a maintenance which needs to be put. Or for a planned maintenance where he needs to be scheduling it, either on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, whatever. And he can get to choose the right kind of a duration for that particular maintenance mode, and also the scheduling from a date point of view. So once this configuration is done, user is able to actually see the reflection of all those different configurations in the views where he's watching these assets. So those assets which are configured with the scheduled maintenance mode, one gets to see those, and you can see that this particular asset is not getting monitored. So these are some of the mechanisms using which the large number of alerts which gets generated by the monitoring system and which causes a problem for the IT pros to have an effective monitoring and mean time to resolve the issue can be tackled in the System Center Operation Manager. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. So obviously, System Center is one of the tools that we make available for managing our environments. How many people here use PowerShell? Yeah, I kind of figured. That was playing to the crowd. So one of the things that we were very excited to do was to take the PowerShell technology and make it available as open source. And this was a big thing for us. The team worked very, very hard on doing this. And in fact, the open source repository will become the repository that we build the version of PowerShell that ships as part of Windows Server, as well as the versions of PowerShell that are available for Linux and Mac as well. And so this is a great technology for managing your infrastructure. We're really excited to be able to provide this and make it available across a lot of different machines and really expose PowerShell capabilities to a new audience of administrators as well. And so as we invest more there, I want to have Joey come up and talk a little bit more about what we're doing in PowerShell as part of this release.
Thanks, Mike. So you guys have probably heard this story before. Developer calls you up and says, the application's ready to go. I've got it working on my local dev machine. Here's the code. Go deploy it for the customers. Right? And we all know that when you go and deploy that thing to your test environment or go and deploy it to production, it's not going to work exactly how you expect it to. And that's because you're not carrying with the application the environmental dependencies and configurations that that application expects. So with Windows Server 2016, we have this awesome DevOps-oriented tooling, specifically PowerShell desired state configuration. So DSC is a configuration management platform that allows you to very simply declare key value pairs that describe the environmental configuration that the app expects to be deployed in. So here we've got some configuration data that defines, right here in Visual Studio Code, that defines the DNS configuration for our development environment. So with just a single line change here, I can add a new CNAME record to this thing. We've got, it's very, very easily, this thing is human readable. You can see the name of the VM, the domain that the DNS server is managing here, is contoso.com, and our CNAME records as a simple array. So I can add a new CNAME record here for www.contoso.com, and we're going to point it to test agent 2, which is where the application expects itself to exist. So all I got to do is save this file, and with VS Code, just make a very simple git commit to add that CNAME record. Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Fix typo. Save this thing. There we go. And I'm going to make a push up to our Git repository. So in the back end, I've configured a Team Foundation server, and this works both on premises and with Visual Studio Team Services. But here I've got a TFS server, and as soon as I made that Git commit, we have a build that gets kicked off. So what this is doing is it's actually going to go out and grab all the PowerShell dependencies for this thing, and then it's going to run a series of Pester tests. So Pester is a community-based PowerShell module that we took into Windows Server 2016 as part of PowerShell 5 that allows us to do some basic unit tests to make sure that the DSC configuration that we're building is valid. And it's also going to do some integration tests to make sure that, in fact, the web server that we expect to be there is up and running, our ports are open, and that the content that we expect on that server is there. So this thing only took 20 seconds to run our test environment, and we configured TFS to automatically do a deployment into production now that all of those tests have passed. And you'll see right here, we've got a release that's in progress. So this thing's going to finish up in just a couple seconds here. And you see I've got testagent2.contoso where that app was working. And I can now load up contoso.com with that www domain. And it's, in fact, going to load up the application in production as we expected. So this thing, I assure you that this is actually the application. I would not get these fancy bubbles if this thing wasn't working. But yeah, a couple more seconds here. It resolves. I promise it's the application. So really briefly, I also want to talk about, as Mike was saying, the investments that we've made in open source. So we actually took the Windows PowerShell and PowerShell Core code base, where PowerShell Core is the Nano-based PowerShell built on top of .NET Core. And in a unified code base, we released all of this stuff under an MIT license. In addition to that, we made PowerShell available on a number of non-Windows platforms. So you've also got a Mac OS build here that you can download, a number of Linux images, Ubuntu, CentOS, Debian, and a Docker container as well. But what does this really mean for you guys? You know, a lot of you guys are IT pros. You know, what does being open source mean? Well, first of all, it means you can come file issues, make feature requests, and give feedback on our designs where we're doing our engineering work. So our entire engineering team, myself included, lives and breathes out of this GitHub repository. And you can come and file issues, submit community RFCs to give us feature requests, and really, you're going to get the feedback directly to the engineering team who can then fix bugs and respond to you in real time. It also means that for those of you who are developers, you can actually contribute directly to the PowerShell code to fix the bugs that might be a little bit lower in our backlog. So, you know, we've already accepted over, I think, 200 or 300 pull requests from the community, and this is for code, tests, documentation. Really, you know, even if you see a simple typo in our documentation, you can just fix that problem and have that delivered into an alpha build today. So today we have PowerShell 6.0 alpha. You can come give it a try. You know, please let us know what you think. Fire it up on your MacBooks, fire it up on your Linux servers, and let us know what you think. So really appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Awesome. Good job. Thanks. It's exciting to see all of that technology being available and going cross-platform and open for everybody to use. We demoed, maybe a little too long, in the Scott's keynote this morning, a lot of the capabilities that we have as part of the new Operations Management Suite. And I won't go into too much detail here. I encourage you, if you're interested in OMS, to go and take a look at those sessions. But OMS will provide the cloud-borne management capabilities that integrate with System Center running on-premise, uses PowerShell, and then uses all of the great technology and functionality that we have as part of Windows Server 2016. And so this really provides us with that umbrella of management features and capabilities to be able to manage across all of these environments. And you can go through terabytes of logs and do analysis in seconds. You can back up and disaster recovery all of your environments into the cloud or into your secondary data centers. And we can provide a great new set of security capabilities that really take all of the threat information that we get from the various different sources that we have, brings that all together and gives you a superb security solution for managing and maintaining your environments. We have many, many partners that we work with to bring these products to market. We wouldn't have the richness and capabilities that we have without the partners. I came here early for Sunday. We had our partner day and brought everybody together. And it was really great to see all of the excitement and all the new technologies that are being developed on top of the platform. And so you should see a lot more capabilities come to market from our partners as well. And we have extensibility for System Center, obviously. But we also announcing here at the conference extensibility for third parties for the OMS platform so that folks can build new great solutions as part of our cloud-borne management solutions as well. So with that, I'm going to ask Aaron to come up on stage real quick. And we're going to kind of close things out. I have the baton. And I'm going to hand off to Aaron. I'm moving on and going to focus on our management technologies going forward. This was my release of Windows Server 2016. Aaron is going to be the general manager driving Windows Server going forward. There will be more to come, which will be exciting to see. And it's been a real pleasure working with Aaron, delivering this with the team. So thank you.
Right. So, yeah, as I mentioned, the whole release of Windows Server 2016 started with you. It started with you, our customers, us listening to you, and us hearing what you wanted us to build. We thought it would be fitting to close out the session from you to hear from some of our CCEP customers that we've been working really closely, that have been working on putting Windows Server into production, what they're excited about and how they're using Windows Server 2016 in their environment. It's glowing. A sound.
We need sound. We could do mime.
Interpretive dance. Servers in a rack.
Any sound in the back? Don't leave, there's a little bit more at the end.
Windows Server 2016 is a key part of our private cloud offering because it really glues together that last mile of security and performance. We're using SugarBeans today to be able to ensure that customer workloads are
All right.
completely encrypted. So customers have
Well, if
If
we're
I
not,
hit forward, if I don't have it in 2 seconds.
Yeah,
All right. All right. I'm gonna go to the last
Sorry
slide
about
just
that.
to we will make sure the video is available up. I wanted to point out that URL at the top. This is a great slide to take a photo of. That aka.ms Windows Server 2016 Ignite. If you go there, sortable, filterable. You can see all the System Center sessions, all the Windows Server sessions by security, by software-defined data center, by the app insights. So please check that out.
we got the 20-year party, so come on over to the expo hall and check that out.
Come see the HoloLens NanoMount at our booth and attend both the foundation sessions, but also come to our booth. And then lastly, as we talked about this morning, the eval version of Windows Server 2016 and System Center 2016 are available today live. Please go download it. We've put a ton of telemetry into the product to really hear from you. And so this is the beginning of the conversation of what's next for Windows Server. So please give us your feedback and let us know what you like and what you'd like to see in the future. With that, please enjoy the rest of the show.